Welcome to the InShape Fitness Show. I am Coach Kim, and today's podcast is about running. It's running season, and today's podcast is about specific equipment that you need to run well. And I'm talking about running for everyone, whether you are the slowest 12-minute paced marathoner or a person trying to run a 4-hour marathon, or perhaps even a little bit faster, someone running an 8-minute to 9-minute pace. Big differences, obviously, in the kinds of runners that run those two sort of extreme variations. Clearly, if you're a competitive runner, you're probably listening to a different podcast. But these are, bucket list runners, recreational marathoners, that maybe some charity marathoners that need some tips on, and I want to preface the equipment thing by telling you that I'm not talking about the best shoes. That is not what this podcast is about. I am not talking about the best gear, the best food tech, the best, satellite GPS watches, or any of that stuff. What I am talking today is the equipment that needs to function well in terms of your body to move forward for some determined distance, whether it's a 5K or a 10K, or maybe a half marathon or a marathon. Half marathons have been my favorite distance now for a little bit of time since I became a mom, I think, and it was really difficult to train for a 4-hour roughly event for a full-length marathon. But half marathon distances tend to be a decent way to stay in shape really well throughout the year for me and for many people that I know. But it doesn't really matter what it is that you're looking to do. Just getting off the couch and trying to incorporate some movement into your life that involves more than walking, that gets your heart rate up and keeps it up for a sustained period of time, is so beneficial to your body. Now, on the other hand, of course, running is really hard on your body. So it is a really interesting two-way mirror of exercise, sort of the beauty of exercise with the bane of people's existence in some ways, because with running comes things like, hip and butt and knee and ankle pain and all kinds of other issues related to the strange mechanics of moving the body over a period of time. So today we're going to talk about breathing. We're going to talk about posture and core strength. And we're going to talk about the third thing is really important, and it's about the difference in strength between the right side of your body and the left side of your body. So before we begin, stand up or sit up really tall and just make sure that your head is on straight. And I like to giggle, but I won't giggle on the podcast, but it is kind of a kooky little thing that I like to do, to think about where your head is. Just physically think about where your head is, and then figuratively think about where your head is, so that you get all the noise out of your brain and you can zero in on your physicality and on the three things that I'm going to talk about today. But physically speaking, make sure that your head is back. We have this uncanny knack for craning the head forward and trying to get a little closer to the computer screen, or slightly closer to the iPhone or to the keyboard, in order to make sure, or the steering wheel if you're in a car, to make sure that we have the best view of things. But the truth of the matter is that your head should be back a little bit, so that you make a straight vertical line between the ears and your shoulders. You push your shoulders back and open up the chest. Guess what happens? You alleviate some of the tension that starts to generate in the back of your neck and the top part of your back, that flat muscle called the trapezius, and your and the smaller muscles that protect and function as the moving parts for the cervical part of your spine are very, very susceptible to tension as a result of this movement of the head forward. And so you want to get your head back. Take a couple of deep breaths as you are doing that. And then just think about the rest of your body parts. Make sure if you're standing, if you're walking around your apartment doing some, or your house doing some chores while you're listening to this, think about making sure that you are using both feet equally, making sure that you are keeping your back straight, not sticking out your butt, tucking your tailbone in a little bit, and then taking those deep guttural breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. All right. So the breath is the first thing. The reason I'm going to talk about the breath before we talk about your posture and your core strength is because it is a piece of equipment that most people completely disregard as important in the training process. But I have a great deal of experience with many, many hundreds, thousands of runners in New York City over the 8 years that I have trained people for the New York City Marathon, as well as my own just sort of general fitness for myself, my own distance running, not fast, not super competitive, but definitely sustainable level of fitness through the act of running around, running from place to place in New York City, which is what I do a lot. And then training and competing a little bit in a novice way in distances such as the half marathon, the full marathon, and then just countless 5Ks, 4 milers, and 10Ks. And it is an amazing sense of freedom to know that without having to buy anything, you can hone in on and appreciate, benefit from a piece of equipment that is stuck to the front of your face. And it is huge. I cannot underscore, bold, emphasize enough the power of your breath when it comes to working your body through aerobic exercise. And when it comes down to running, which is one of the hardest aerobic exercises that you might endeavor to participate in, you really want to practice deep breathing, nasal breathing, not always really, really deep guttural breathing for your cadence, depending on whether you're hiking or jogging or sprinting, but the ability to bring air into your body, filter it through your nose, send it into the cardiorespiratory system, which thus sends it out to your muscles and other soft tissues that need it for movement, and exhale all the waste gases out through your mouth, is both an assumed and sort of naively assumed mistaken function, as well as the key to unlocking longevity and sustainability for your running. When you run, you take 3 steps as you inhale, and then you exhale, taking with 2 steps. So you inhale for 3 steps, you exhale for 2 steps. It is really amazing to work into a comfort level with this somewhat strange pattern, because a lot of people don't have a hard time with it. It's not super intuitive. It has to be something that you consciously do. And I'll tell you this, if you are a bit of a runner, even a recreational treadmill jogger, it's going to screw you up for the first little bit. Could be a week, could be more than a week. It's something you got to do slowly to adapt to the way the pattern works. And you've got to just recognize that you're going to screw it up a ton. I screw it up a ton now, and I've been running this way for a couple of years now. So you inhale for 3 steps, and you through your nose, and then you exhale for 2 steps. Why do we do that? That has to do with the third part of today's podcast, which I'm going to get to a little bit later, which relates to the pounding that you do to the body as you exhale and how right-handed people exhale, planting the right foot down. That's why the dominant leg often has repetitive stress issues, because we are planting the right foot down as we exhale every single mile we take, every half a mile we take. You want to make sure that your left leg is also the lead plant foot for your exhalation. And so you inhale for 3 steps, pitter patter, and then you exhale for 2, which forces you to exhale on the right foot, then the left foot, then the right foot, then the left foot. So again, it's something to practice with slow recovery level, easy conversational pace runs. That's a whole other podcast, by the way. In fact, let's just plan on doing that next week. If you are interested in the variations of runs, if you are interested in the variations of training runs, easy, tempo, race pace, conversational, recovery, blah, blah, blah. Lots of different ways to describe these different versions or different paces, and I will talk about those next week when I go through the next podcast. It's running season, and so it's outdoor season. These are applicable podcasts for things other than running. Inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth is also important in every facet of your life virtually, as a result of what happens if you breathe in through your mouth, which is what I observe people doing all the time while they're exercising. It's panic breathing. And it's not like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Sort of that level of panic, but it is a panic-induced it triggers panic-induced physiological processes in your body that prevent your body from performing as well as it should when you inhale through your mouth. When you take air in through your mouth, you bypass the special filters that reside in your nose. I'm not going to go into the specifics of that, but if you get a chance to read this book about the perfume industry called The Emperor of Scent, I will try to remember the name of the author of The Emperor of Scent. As I am sitting here, I am going to look it up. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember the name of it. Chandler Burr. I didn't even have to end up clicking on it. Chandler Burr is the name of the author of this book, and it is about the perfume industry technically, but the cool, sort of really sciencey part of this book is about how the nose is really a sophisticated piece of equipment, a spectroscope inside of your body. And so inhaling through your nose, that process of filtering the air through your nose plays a particular role in your biological, your internal processes. When you take air in through your mouth and you bypass that, you trigger some primitive parts of your body, namely stress hormone secretion like cortisol and adrenaline, and the elevation without need of your heart rate, because your body thinks that it's, a gazelle and a lion is chasing you down. That's the kind of level of difference between nasal breathing, inhaling, and mouth breathing. So those two things about the breath you really want to make sure you remember. 3-2 breathing for running, taking 3 steps as you inhale, taking 2 steps as you exhale. And then remember why we inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. All right, let's just move on now to some core elements and your posture. Because the other thing about running and jogging lightly or whatever, and your posture is that the plumb line has some really big problems for most recreational runners. The plumb line is something I always talk about when we do the postural systems check in our podcast workouts. This is not one of those, but if you are interested in our podcast workouts, the other channel that we do at In Shape Fitness called AM Muscle Maintenance is all basic, like 20-minute workouts that you can do without equipment. And we always start with a postural systems check where we talk about the plumb line. I talk about the plumb line and the straight line that you can draw down the side of your body from the top of your head, through your ears, through your shoulders, down through your hips, and then your ankles is meant to be a straight line. But if you observe many recreational runners, you will notice that there's a little bend. There are a couple of bends, but a striking bend is at the hip flexors. People bend forward at the hips. They sort of bend over a little bit because we're bent over so much in our regular lives. I think people have a really hard time straightening their hip flexors even out as a result of sitting all day. There's no thinking about that. That is 100% an objective statement. If you sit all day, you have tight hip flexors and they just don't want to straighten out. When you're running, this is a particularly big issue for people that want to bucket list a marathon, for example, or even a 5K, and that you sit all day, but then you want to go out and you want to, jog for 5 miles or jog for 10 or 15 miles as a result of your training program, which is so honorable. And, people get through it all the time without, they get through it. But there should not be a bend in your hips when you're running. And also your head, there's that head position as well, right? So your head should be back, your hips should be straight. The bend that is acceptable is a slight bend through the ankles. So your plumb line stays straight. But the angle slightly shifts relative to your running surface. So if you bend through the ankles slightly, you're activating the back of your leg more. You can kick your heels back up more, and your gait is improved, your cadence is improved, your running economy improves. That is the postural part of your of running success. Now, where core strength plays into this is kind of what I was talking about just a little bit ago in terms of sitting all day and having piss poor flexibility and strength in your hips and your butt and your hamstrings, which are not your core technically, but they relate to your core so directly because they're right there at the base of your butt. You don't need to have a flat stomach to be a runner. You don't. I know plenty of successful runners that carry a couple of extra pounds, 5 pounds, even 10 pounds even. I know a couple of runners that carry 30 pounds more than they should, but they still get it done. And one of the ways that they do that is by learning how to run correctly. So they work the hips, they work their butt, and they work the lateral side of the legs and the hamstrings in order to ensure that the lower part of your core, your pelvic area, is stable and strong. Your hip flexors are the headlights of your running position. So your hips should be elongated and your knees bend back at the knee level. And the gazelle sort of motion, the gait of a really beautiful runner is like a glide, sort of a lift off, an up with the leg kicking back behind the body. You don't need to extend the leg forward to take the next step so far because your feet should land right under your center of gravity. If you lean in forward through your ankles, you help the propulsion of your body because you're slightly more aerodynamic. But by bending at your hip flexors and planting your leg down in a way that activates mostly your quad and negates or sort of quashes the use of your butt and your hamstrings, is going to be harder on you in terms of your ability to manage some sort of running event, some sort of exercise, whether it's a training run or an actual, competition. Okay, so that's the two things. The last thing that I want to talk about, and then I'll let you go, is this right-left thing, because I talk about the right-left issue a lot. We just did a workout, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, just focused on single leg movements, and they are really, really important for every single person that wants to have a sustainable, active life. Pain-free, medicine-free, sustainable, active life. That is the mission. It is not good enough to be a marathoner that is always checking in to the physical therapy office. It's not good for your body. It's not good enough to be popping pills for pain every time you sign up for a race. It's not healthy to have to, slave away on this really rigorous, training schedule just to get through a fun run with your family. There are sustainable, pain-free, medical intervention-free ways to figure out how to move your body. And one of the main tactics we use at InShape Fitness is to assess and work on the strength of the right leg relative to the strength of the left leg. You can figure out how different the two sides of your body are really easily. In terms of balance, you can do a balance test. I'd like the 10-second eyes closed balance test the best, just because it's super fast, where you pick up your left leg, you're standing on your right leg, you close your eyes. If you can stand there for 10 seconds without wobbling, great. Same with your left leg. Or you can do other exercises related to tree pose, forward reaches. There are lots of different single leg balances that you can try. You can also measure the circumference of your legs to see if one is bigger than the other. You can do some lunges and just have someone watch you to see where your foot positions are, how big of a step you're able to take, what the angles of your legs are. Because right-handed people, and this is the majority of the people in this world, in this country, vast majority of adults are right-handed. And because of right dominance, the right leg is stronger than the left leg. So the left leg is being protected by the right leg slightly, especially if you do exercise a little bit. People that don't exercise at all don't really feel this difference. But when you start exercising, and if you're right-handed, particularly if you start exercising fairly seriously and you're trying to do something bigger, like maybe run a marathon or a half marathon, if you're not careful, you're going to start feeling the right foot, right ankle, right knee, right hip, potentially right butt cheek, and left lower back issues. Sometimes left hip, but left lower back issues as a result of the planting down the repetitive stress to your right leg. So, what do? You've got to warm up before you run. Big time. Big time. If you are not, now I know that if you're training for a long event and you've got like a 2-hour run, you just want to go out there and get it done. But there are some things that you should do first whenever you go out. Activating, stimulating the muscle groups that need to be involved in the act of running is vital. Plank, hip bridge, a couple of squats, a series of lunges, maybe a little bit of jumping to stimulate those neurotransmitters in your feet. Plank, hip bridge, squats, lunges. What was the last thing I said? And a couple of jumps, maybe a series of you could double up the squats with the squat jump, with jumps and make a squat jump. The warm up is really important. The lunges and single leg hopping and various other things like forward kicks, side kicks, anything on the floor related to side movement, single leg hip bridges, anything that you can do that helps you remember that your legs need to pull their own weight, especially when it comes to distance training. And I'm going to let you go with that note. So we covered today 3 important aspects, 3 important pieces of equipment in your running. One is your breath, your breathing pattern. The second was your posture, your plumb line. And the third is the equal strength between the left side and the right side of your body. If you have questions about these 3 elements of running, please let me know. Get in touch with me at bodybyInShape.com. Otherwise, as I promised earlier, I will be back next week with a podcast about different runs within a running training schedule. And join us as well on the AM Muscle Maintenance channel for a workout, which we will be doing very shortly. Have a great rest of the day. I will see you again soon.